The bar and bar values within the presenter folder is one way to create bar charts within Vizrt. To set up an example scene here, we're going to jump back into the geometry plugins. We're going to use a cube to create a bar chart. So we're going to drag a cube into the scene tree, and if you want to give it a color a while, we can jump back into the server and drag a material on it as well. While we're in the scene tree, we need to group it, so let's hit the Control G or the group button. While we're here, let's rename it to, we can call this bar chart, and then we're going to rename our first container, that's the cube, maybe bar 1 or something like that. Naming conventions aren't a big deal in here when it comes to the presenter plugin. However, the way that you set up your container and your container structure is very important. So now to do that, we're going to go back into our built-ins within the container plugins, and within the presenter folder, we have the bar and the bar values. We need to use these two in conjunction with each other for this plugin to work. So before we do drag these plugins onto here, we need to think about how we want this bar chart to act. So as you increase or decrease the bar chart, you probably want it to grow from the bottom. If that's the case, we want to come into our cube and we want to set our center Y position here to bottom. And you can see when we do that, our bounding box with it on shows us that the center point is now at the bottom. Now we can come into our presenter plugins and drag these onto our containers. First is the bar. So we're going to take the bar plugin and drag that onto the cube container. And we're going to take the bar values and drag that onto the topmost container. Now we're going to go into the bar plugin properties. And over here we have a couple of options. First, it has a standalone option, which is off by default. We're going to leave that off. We also have a bar min and a bar max, and they're grayed out at the moment, so we don't need to worry about these at the moment. We also have an object min and an object max, and will help us with the sizing parameters of our bar, so we're just going to leave them as is. The next point is the most important of this setting is the parameter type, and you can see we have a couple of options here. We have a parameter, a position, a rotation, a scale, an alpha, and a text. So depending on what you want to do with these presenter plugins, you can use one of these options. In our case, since we do want this to grow from the Y or grow up and down, we're going to use a parameter. So we're going to come down to parameter name and we're going to type in size underscore Y. And we can grab that parameter name from our show commands. So if we had opened up our show or shell commands here and we click on the cube and you click on the position Y somewhere in there, you'll get the size Y parameter. And that's how we know what to type within this parameter name here. So we're at size Y. Last thing what we need to do is just hit initialize there, and that will initialize the cube. Lastly, if we do want some text with this, we're going to come into the server, navigate to a font folder, and drag a font as a subcontainer of our cube. We're going to copy that bar plugin onto our text and click on that bar plugin of the text. In this case, the parameter name is now going to be text as opposed to parameter. We're going to change the text below that to integer. We don't have to worry about float or formatted. In this case, it's integer. And we're going to hit initialize, and you can see that that text now reflects the size of the bar. Let's just move this text over a little bit so that it doesn't interfere with the cube. And now we can come back into our bar values to adjust the size of our first bar chart. So here within the bar values, we have number of bars. We only have one bar in the scene at the moment, so we're going to leave that as is. There's an auto max. It's set to manual by default. We're going to leave it on the default setting. There's also a bar max and a bar min. Again, sizing information that we can adjust later, and then also a scale, which will help us adjust the size as well. So those are easier to adjust once you actually have your cube set up and some values in there to see exactly how big and small you can make your cubes. Lastly, here we have our bar animation and bar value. Well, if we can increase this bar value, it's going to start increasing this bar. So now we just want to make some adjustments as far as the design and copying it. So we could just reposition this first one, and if you wanted to move the text below it as opposed to on the side of it, we can do that. Also, if you wanted to change the material of it, since it is a subcontainer, it's taking on the material of the cube. So if you want to overwrite that, you can. If you want to rotate your cube a little bit, you can see if we rotate it, we could do that as well. Lastly, if you wanted to add bars to this bar chart, you could. Now that everything is set up with our first working bar, it's as easy as coming down here and copying. So now if we just spread these out manually on the X position, we'll move this one over here, our third one. We'll just position these on the X, and then we'll go into the bar values to actually adjust these. So we go into the bar values plugin. Now, instead of number of bars, we need to increase this to 4 since we have 4 bars within our scene. So with the 4 bars, we now also have this bar animation, and this is going to become important now since we added number of bars. So we need to increase this to 4 now since we have 4 bars. And with our number of bars at 4, we now have bar value 1, bar value 2, bar value 3, and bar value 4. So as we come over and adjust our bar value 2, that we can see that works, our bar value 3 works, and our bar value 4 works as well. And again, if you needed to mess with the scaling of all of these, you have your bar max here and your bar min, and this will set the maximum number or maximum size of that you want these bars to reach. You can also tweak it a little bit within your object max over here within the bar setting as well. So that's the bar presenter and one way to create bar charts. This parameter name being the very most important part of this plugin, and structure as well. How you set this scene tree up is going to be very important in the way that your bar charts work.